Where else can you find tea while being honest? Hey y'all, it's your girl Coach Jazz, and today we have a special guest, a friend I have learned so much from, and who just inspires me so much by simply being who she is and who God says she is. My girl does not ever mind sharing a story about the Bible or what God has done for her. She is actually the reason I started this podcast. About a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years, she came up with the idea to do a podcast. We were both just so excited and throwing ideas out and throwing out details. She was into TikTok, so I'm like, yeah, you should do that. You should do that, no doubt. Then she comes back months later and tell me that it wasn't meant for her, the podcast idea. It was meant for me. And I'm like, no, not for me, not at all. But here we are, lo and behold, here we are today with honesTEA Podcast with Coach Jazz. I am so excited. Welcome to my podcast, Taisha.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Today's topic will be about spiritual growth. Because who are we without our creator? So I'm going to share a little story actually, because that question alone is very thought provoking to someone when you're just out here existing, indulging in worldly activities and serving no purpose. That used to be me. It took for me to be at rock bottom in 2021. I was in a very toxic and draining relationship. Me and my dad had got into it like really bad. We was living together. He ended up moving out. Like it was just bad. My car engine went out, so I was without a car. COVID had us on lockdown, so we was at home all the time. I was battling depression really bad, and what put the icing on the cake was my granddad passing away. And even though I was trying my hardest to maintain and keep my head above water, I was sinking and drowning. I wasn't going to church like I should have been at that point. I was just under a huge dark cloud from the time I woke up in the morning, everywhere I went, and even when I went to bed at night. That's where I was at. I had to take some notes. And even when I went to bed at night, so one day I was sitting at my kitchen table in my apartment, and the devil told me to kill myself. He didn't just tell me to kill myself. He came with power. Like he actually had control over my body in that moment. I got up and proceeded to the knife drawer. Even with my son being in the next room watching TV and drinking juice per usual, just chilling, I got up and I reached for that drawer. And when I did that, a vision of what could have happened played clear as day in my head. Every detail from it happening to my son walking in and finding me. And at that moment, I felt like I was in a tug of war battle between God and the devil. God told me that I must live because he wasn't done with me. And from that moment forward, life looked totally different for me. It was so unfamiliar, yet it was so peaceful. I got back in church, and y'all, even the sermons hit different. I stopped existing and started to be present in church. I stopped just showing up and started to actually show up and listen. I was more open, and I am so grateful for my pastor, Pastor James Morgan Jr. It's like my eyes were open to a new world that I never knew before. And with all that being said, I became more in tune with my God and my higher power. I grew spiritually and became more connected. So that's why I have Ty here today, because there's no better person that I could have chosen to do this podcast with. I don't know how it all aligns, but I truly feel like you were sent here to me during the time I needed someone relatable. You really just seem to balance life so well, and with your knowledge of the Bible and how you can tell a story and make it both funny and knowledgeable, really reel me in. And I just wanted to keep you close and be your friend. So tell me, what is your perspective on spiritual growth?
Well, first, I thank you so much for opening up with that opening, because there's so many people that need to, hear your story, your testimony, because there's so many people battling what you went through, and a lot of people feel like they're alone. So just by you putting it out there, that's a huge step for other people, because a lot of people go through that and they feel like they're alone in it. So, I applaud you for that, because a lot of people don't like to speak up on things like that. And we really need people in the world to speak up on things like that, to let other people know that it is okay out here to talk to someone. I'm sorry, guys. What was the question again?
What is your perspective on spiritual growth?
Spiritual growth to me, is building a relationship with your higher power, whatever your higher power may be. Mine is Jesus. You know, I'm always gonna say my God's name because, you know, I need people to know my God is Jesus. So my perspective on spiritual growth is just building a relationship with your higher power, whether it's through prayer, going to church, you know, reading the Bible, however you want to get closer to, you know, your higher power. Mine was to actually read the Bible. I went to church my whole life. You know, I couldn't quite grab it. You know, everybody preached different, everybody sing different. So I couldn't actually get what I was looking for. I had to actually read it myself and research different things that was going on in the Bible to find out that it was true. I needed different people to break it down to me because I couldn't understand certain words. So I tried different Bibles. So I can get, you know, clarification on a lot of stuff. A lot of the words was, some of it was difficult. Some of them, what they mean now didn't mean back then.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of research on, you know, the Bible for me to get an understanding so I can grow in my, you know, spirituality. But that's how I did it. I just got closer. I built a relationship with God. And I prayed and I looked in my Bible when I read different things. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to share with people so that they can see what I understood because I didn't understand the lies. So that's where our relationship came in.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, Jasmine, did you know this happened in the Bible?
And I'm like, no, what happened? Because I promise I'm not no Bible professional. I don't know it like that. I go to church, I read scripture, but I don't know the stories like that. So
right. Once I figured it out, I had to tell somebody. So that's how I grew in mine. Like just like actually reading it myself.
Okay, because yeah, that Bible is hard to read. It really is hard to read, especially when you don't know what you're reading or don't understand. I tried to read that Bible from Genesis to the back. Reading it from you'll be confused. Like you gotta read certain books to get to where you need to so you can understand the timeline of certain events.
Right.
But anyways, I'm gonna go on to the next question. How do you see your faith expressed in your daily interactions with others, whether it's at work or your personal life? Because you know we work in corrections, so we worked in corrections together, and that's a draining job. You got to be presently available to deal with people who's fighting their own battles, fighting their own demons every day. You got to be able to keep your head on straight. And so, with you working now at the parole office, how do you see your faith expressed? And it's not just work, you know, and in your personal life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, one of my the verses I live by is, you know, walk by faith and not by sight. I see that, you know, expressed in every day is because places that I am now, I would have never imagined I was in these places back then in the past. So when I talk to people, I tell them to go through their storms because you don't know how it's molding you for the future. All of the things that I went through in the past, I would have never thought I would be in the position I am now. But now I see how all of those situations and all of those hard places, dark places I had to go through, I see now how it molded me to be the person that I am to talk to people that I'm talking to now. So I tell people all the time, you know, just go through your storm because it could just be molding you. Who you are today may not be strong enough for what you got to face tomorrow. So go through whatever storm you're going through now because it's gonna mold you to be the person that you need to be for the future. So you know, now that I'm in front of people and I can tell them this because I'm a walking witness, I went through it, you know, it's expressed that way. Like, because it's easier said than done, but I did it. So I can actually tell other people, you know, it look rough now, but I promise you, when you get to the end of the tunnel, that light is there. Right. So that's one way that it's expressed in my, you know, daily life.
Okay, well, yeah, because you never know too where people are. Like, you know, everybody got different backgrounds. They grew up different. They had a different way of living, a whole different way of life. You can look at somebody on the street who looks completely normal to you, but had a totally different path in life than you did.
Right.
But then it only takes for them to mess up or for them to be at rock bottom and seek out some help, or you know something about them for you to even know that they went through certain things. Right. And sometimes people don't never even come to the point of accepting that they're going through something. It's just their way of living. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's just what it is. And that's the way I take it too, working with them residents in the prison, because I deal with behaviors. Yes, I have to punish them. I have to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, but it's what they're supposed to do. But I also talk to them, because you can see, you know, the ones who are going through it, they be crying out for attention so bad, and it be in the worst way. So it'd be just good to just talk to people and, you know, share what you know and what you can with them, because it's okay to be relatable, no matter where you are, no matter what rank you hold. It's okay to be relatable.
Yeah, a lot of people, they like to see the hope. You know, people can tell them, you know, it's gonna get better, but they want to actually see someone who been through something before and actually came out of it. That right there heals better than to just tell them. So, you know, to relate to them sometimes is always good, because you can tell them, hey, I've been there, I done that. You know, it's always a better way out. Instead of just, you know, I tell them all the time, you know, just reading straight through a book, that ain't gonna help nobody. But if I can tell them my life story and be like, you're not alone in this, like, I done came through some stuff too. You just got to keep fighting through it and look at the outcome. You know, they be, you know, willing to understand it. Right.
So I heard you mention your the Bible verse, walk by faith and not by sight. Would you say that's one of your favorite verses?
It's one of my favorite verses. It took me a while to actually understand it, you know, because sometimes you can look at the situation and it don't look like it's getting any better. It's not about what you see, it's about what you believe. And as long as you believe, you know, what God can do in your life, that's all that matters. Like, you can't look at, because everything that look good, what's the saying? Everything that good ain't gold.
Ain't gold.
That's a true statement. You know, you got to stop looking at stuff and you got to believe it within yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my favorite verses in the Bible.
Okay. So this is more of a deeper question. Have you ever experienced a moment of deep connection with something greater than yourself? And though you already mentioned, you know, that Jesus is your God, it's your higher power. He's your higher power. Let me correct it. What was that deep, like what was the thing that made you feel like, hey, I feel really connected?
Mm-hmm. Well, I went through a traumatic event a couple of years ago, and during that time, I knew there was a God. I believed that there was a God, but I was not connected. There was a difference. I was not connected, but I knew that there was a God. It took for me to go through a traumatic event to actually test it and see, and that's how I became connected. I went through a very, very terrible situation with the passing of my sister and nieces, and I decided to try. You know, I'm gonna speak just like I spoke then. I decided to try this guy, this man that my grandma and mom and auntie them spoke of. So I was like, you know, let me see what he can do for me, because they speak so highly of him. Let me see what he can do for me. So in that moment of hurt and, you know, grieving, I decided to reach out, and I did it through prayer, because I needed help in that moment. I didn't know how to properly breathe when you being a teenager. I didn't know how to properly breathe. So I decided to pray. And I prayed. I didn't know how to pray. First of all, you know, to me, prayer was just a conversation with him. And I just decided to just talk to him. And, you know, I reached out to him and I told him I was hurting. And I got an answer back. I actually got an answer back. And, you know, it's hard to explain to people that I got an answer back, but I actually did. And it changed my whole perspective of, you know, the whole spiritual thing. It changed my whole, you know, perspective of it, because I actually got that connection. I got that relationship. I got that answer that I was searching for. And I was a kid at the time, so I couldn't turn back from it. I couldn't run from it either. Once he grabbed a hold of me, you know, I was stuck from there on out. But it was during a traumatic event when I decided to, you know, when I experienced a connection with my higher power, which is, you know, Jesus. I just prayed during a hard time, and, You know, the Bible saying that God is near the broken heart. And I was going through, you know, a heartbreak with losing my sister. And he answered my prayer. He came through, he gave me so much peace to the point where I was able to breathe and I was able to, you know, let her actually rest. And, you know, I'm very much thankful because I didn't go through, I didn't, you know, I see a lot of people lose loved ones. I didn't, you know, God shielded me. And I can't thank him enough because I know it can be hard on a lot of people, you know, and I do advise to truly give it over to God because I experienced it and it helped so much. Like I was able to blossom and become the person that I was supposed to become without no interruption. And I know that if he wouldn't have stepped in when he did, I don't think I would have been the person that I am today and helped so many people in my life because I know that grief would have interfered with it.
That's awesome, and that's amazing, an amazing story too. Well, a great answer too. You know, it's just you. I can't even put it into words because it's like what they say. God is an on time God. Mm-hmm. Yes, He is. He's an on time God, right. And when you going through it, it's like, especially when you don't know. Like we grew up in church our whole life, mm-hmm. and both my parents took us to church every Sunday. We was at church. We was at the programs and stuff. We went to a convention one time. You know, it was just we was just going to church. So my parents probably knew, but we didn't know. Like we weren't being actually taught like who Jesus is and what God, you know, what everything represents and why, you know. So we got baptized as kids, and I'm gonna speak for myself. For me, I got baptized because everybody else was getting baptized. You know, I didn't. We was kids, mm-hmm. and so it took for me to go through a traumatic event to understand. Whoa, God been protecting me this whole time. Mm-hmm. God done kept me safe. Done provided for me. It's just an eye-opening experience, and I'm telling you, it feels so good, and it's so hard to unlearn those past behaviors. Mm-hmm. But with God, I mean, everything is possible. Right. It ain't nothing we can't do, nothing that He won't do for us. And in those moments when we need Him most, He shows up for real. And you got to be open to listening to Him because the voice is so small and so exciting, or the action is so. It's just something that you won't even realize or think to say this guy in the moment. Like it'll be later on, you be like, wow. Right. You know, so that's good. Mm-hmm. Well, the next thing I have is if we coming to an end. So are you expecting or working on anything exciting in the future?
Currently not at the moment. I'm kind of just going with the flow. You know, I had plans. First of all, this wasn't even my plans right here. You know, being a counselor and all that was never in my plans. I wanted to be a supermodel. I did. I had a couple of kids that kind of threw the dreams out of the way.
Supermodel tie.
I wanted to be a Victoria's Secret model. I did.
Period.
I did. But God had other plans for me. So I have learned how to just follow his path. I don't know where he's leading me to, but I do know that he's leading me somewhere. So I've just learned how to kind of just obey. I'm not all the way there yet. I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. But I do know that he's trying to get me somewhere. So when I don't take no credit for anything that he says to other people because I know I get put around certain people for certain reasons and he deliver messages through me to them. So I just go where he needs me to go and I say what he needs me to say. So at the moment, currently, no, I don't have any plans. I'm on his time and I'm kind of like just on his time. And like now, I'm here talking to you about God and I was meant to be here. So that wasn't a part of my plan. You know, he put it on my agenda. So right now I'm just going on his time.
Okay, and that's tea. That's your tea for today. What they say, clock that tea. How you do clock that tea? Okay, so this was great. This was awesome. And again, thank you for being here with me today, Ty. I want you to do one more thing for me, just one. Share with our listeners your experience on this podcast today.
Well, I really enjoyed myself. I love the topic. I think that people should talk more about. I'm glad that you have opened up the floor to to have a safe space to talk about something like this, especially with the opening, because I feel like mental health is a real issue in today's time, and I feel like people need a safe space to come and talk. So I am applauding you for actually doing this because I feel like you are opening up a door for this generation to feel safe, to be able to come and see that there's other people out here in the world, like even if it's just looking for a high power, they just tune in and just listen. You don't know who God may be trying to connect you with. So I think that this is awesome what you are doing, and I am so honored to be a part of it. And I pray that something that I said may reach somebody, and you get to know God a little bit more.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Well, like I said, thank you for being here and thank you to the listener. Tune in with us. The video will drop on July 7th. And my next video will be 2 weeks after that with my special guest. So look out for my flyer. Bye, y'all.